you can't stop innovation and you
Yeah.
can't stop what people want, right?
What tipped the scales, do you think, during that time of going from a doctor, and I totally agree with you, but going from a doctor to a patient-centric model, like how did that start in your opinion, from your perspective?
I'll say I think the hyper growth of sort of the whole social media piece of Facebook and Yelp and Google and the driving of reviews, right?
Mm,
People were at that time were so focused on looking up a place online and where to go based on where the reputation was. And I think that really opened people's eyes to, hey, patients can move.
wow.
If they
Yeah, because
don't like,
before dentistry was protected by legislation before that, right? Like
yes,
you controlled your patient flow by having laws of not letting other people open practices.
there was a lot of state regulatory stuff going on, and the politics were very heavy back then. But at the end of the day, you can't stop innovation and you
Yeah.
can't stop what people want, right? And so I do think that was a bit of sobering reality that I even saw my stepdad's colleagues deal with, where you went from that model of uh, the traditional practice name on the door, single guy in the shop or gal, and sort of referring to their buddies, to everything under one roof. And then the DSOs really got the engines going, and
Yeah.
all the smart people in the room entered the dental industry, and the innovation really started to kick in. And I think that's where the shift really got its movement from.
So now you have two practices. You have Real Smiles and you have this massive Rodeo practice. And you're way ahead. You like was there other dentist practices like that at that time? Have you ever
Not
seen a dental
really at
practice?
the time. No, no, because it wasn't only the four walls. We immediately started bringing experience into the piece. We'd bring in entertainment in the lobby, and
Clowns and stuff, yeah.
we'd have themed events going on, and we'd have face painters and balloon artists and all kinds of cool stuff. So we brought some life into the practice, that I think was very disruptive and innovative. And so that was a big piece. And then we leaned in on the service piece and the multi-specialty, having the ortho in there and the pedo, really drove some good results for us.
So where are you at vision wise right now? So you have two practices, and where's your
So
brain at
so
of like,
now, yeah. So then, fast forward a year later, we brought in our pediatric dental partner, Dr. Bill Dunklin, who's one of the best pediatric guys in the state, and he had recently gotten married at that time in 2010. He wanted to move to South Texas with his wife, and they moved to South Padre area, and we said, hey, that could be a great area where we can start the rodeo model. It's never been done before in that area. So they moved down. My wife and I, that were both practicing at the time full time, we moved down and we started in 2011 the second rodeo location in Brownsville, Texas.
mm.
And subsequently that year, each quarter, we opened location 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So,
How were you? Was it all doctor funded, like each step of the way? Like you bring
yes.
in a partner? Okay.
Yeah, what we did was now we had about five partners, all dentists, and we would utilize our banking relationships, and that actually strengthened. That was a very heavy recession time, right? So
Yeah.
the ability for just myself to go to the bank was really hard. I think Dr. Roman was talking about it on your last podcast, and
Yeah.
I really connected to what he was talking about because it was very similar. I mean, the banks stopped lending, right? Remember in like 08,
Yeah.
09, they're like,
Yeah.
no, we're done. But by leveraging two or three or four of us, they were much more comfortable lending a few $100,000 to start a practice, right? Versus one person. So I think that sort of market forces sometimes drive you towards innovation.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of drove us to have to do a group practice in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And so we would go to the bank, and each location would get its own bank loan, and then we would fund it the rest with anything that we earned. We'd put it right back in. And we started the traditional way from locations 2 through 6. But it was really like calling your friends and colleagues, hey, do you want to come and work with us? And it was a very fun time, but we quickly went from you know 40 employees to 120, and it became kind of a different business at that point, right?